As always, we are going to sing a little bit, give people a chance to come on. I'm not sure how many of you who are watching are from Israel, but we had a lot of rain today, a huge amount of rain. So that's a big bracha. That's a big, big bracha. Okay, let's sing a little bit. Ding 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 and ding 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 and ding ding ding. Hey ding 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 and ding 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 ding. Hey ding 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 and ding ding ding. Ding 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 ding. I ding 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 ding. I nine nine ding nine I nine and the ding nine and the ding ding nine nine ding nine and the ding ding nine hey nine 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 and the ding ding nine I nine 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 and the ding ding nine hey nine 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 and the ding ding nine hey nine hey nine Ini nai amai nai, ini nai nai nai. I am by under ding 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 hey ding 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 honey ding 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 am by ding 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 I ding 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 under ding 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 hey ding 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 I ding 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 I nine 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 I nine 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 I am by nine 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 and the ding ding nine nine hey nine nine and the ding ding nine hey nine nine and the ding ding nine hey nine nine and the ding ding nine ding nine oh I, ini, nai, 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 I. Okay, let me just ask, Yoni, are you live on Facebook? Is Yoni there? Okay, just 1 second. I want to tell my wife 1 second. Okay, good. Okay. Welcome again, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parsha Toldot. And in this Parsha, we learn the most about Isaac, Yitzhak, than any other Parsha. Even though he's mentioned already in the two previous, but this whole Parsha is really centered around Yitzhak. And by next Parsha, it moves to Yaakov. So what I wanted to do today was try to present a picture of Yitzhak, and we'll see it's not exactly what a lot of people think from just reading the text. When we read the text, and even in our tradition, we'll call it a more one-dimensional view of Yitzhak, is he's always associated with Gevura, especially in the Sfirot. With Gevura, Gevura means judgment, strength, law, order, just sometimes even severe judgments. And Yitzhak is always associated with Gevura, whereas Abraham is always associated with Chesed, loving kindness, being an extrovert, deeds of loving kindness. Where Yitzhak, the picture of Yitzhak usually is of someone who's very introverted and quiet and working kind of behind the scenes. So we want to expand that today. We want to look at a few of the hints that the Parsha give us to see a broader view of Yitzhak. And then there'll be things that we can learn from it, because the theme of all of these classes is growth through Torah. So you want to see how we can integrate this into our own lives. So the first hint is in his name itself. Yitzhak means to laugh. This is coming from when Abraham first hears that in his later years, after biologically not being able to have children, that he will have a son. And Sarah also. And both of them laughed. And so his name, God actually told them to name him Yitzhak. So already, even though we have this picture of him as being very introverted and quiet and meditative, which are all true, they're all true, but his name itself represents something very, very different. Laughter and joy. Because he brought great joy when he was born. His whole birth was associated with basically a miraculous kind of joy that was beyond anything that could be expected. So the first verse of this parsha is Ela Toldot Yitzhak ben Abraham. Avram holided Yitzhak. So these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham gave birth to Isaac. So everyone asks, why the redundancy here? If the first part of the sentence says, these are the generations of Isaac, the son of Abraham, why do we have to then say that Abraham gave birth to Isaac? It seems redundant. The general principle is there are no redundancies in the Torah. If it appears to be a redundancy, it's telling us something. It's telling us something. So here we have what is called the principle of interinclusion. The idea that Abraham gave birth to Yitzhak. In other words, Abraham gave over to Yitzhak, and Yitzhak was able to integrate Abraham's main personality trait, which was giving and loving kindness. And the opposite also, that Abraham, who was chesed, loving kindness, was able to integrate into his being the idea of gevura, of Yitzhak's main personality trait of great strength and judgments. And this is what's called interinclusion. So that already tells us that we have more than a one-dimensional picture here. And we already see that because if Yitzhak is associated with gevura, with strictness, but his name is just the opposite. So we see this in an amazing thing that most people just kind of gloss over, that in the whole 5 books of Moses, the idea that someone loves someone else is not mentioned that much. We're told to love God, and we have to love our neighbor as ourselves. But when it's talking about stories between relationships of people, it doesn't mention love that much. In next week's parsha, we have maybe the classic love at first sight when Yaakov meets Rachel, when Jacob meets Rachel. That's a classic example of love at first sight. But again, the Chumash it never even says that Avram loved Sarah or Sarah loved Avram. But it does say that Yitzhak loved Rivka. That Yitzhak loved Rivka. And it also says that when Abraham was taking Isaac to the offering, God says, the son that you love. So here we see that Avram loved Yitzhak, and Yitzhak loved Rivka. And later in this parsha, in one of the most enigmatic passages in the whole Torah, how Jacob ended up getting the blessing from his father Isaac when it appeared that Isaac wanted to give Esau the blessing. And there it says that Yitzhak loved Esau and Rivka loved Jacob. So here we see that with Yitzhak, 3 different times. First it says that his father loved him. Then it says that he loved his wife. And then it says he loved his son. So we see that all the relationships that Yitzhak had is connected to love. But as we said, love is usually associated with Abraham, with Abraham. So here we see already that it's not so one-dimensional. That even though Yitzhak is strength, where do we see that? When he was bound to the altar. He allowed himself to be bound to the altar. He was certainly old. He was 37 years old at Akedat Yitzchak, at the binding of Isaac. He was certainly grown enough and strong enough to resist it had he wanted to. But with incredible strength, he allowed himself to be bound to the altar. And in this week's parsha, we see that after Abraham dies, the Philistines had stuffed up all of the wells that Abraham had dug. And this represents not just on the physical level that they stuffed up the wells, but it represents that when Abraham left the scene, all of his teachings were in danger of being covered up, of forgotten. And in this week's parsha, we see Yitzhak with great gevura, great strength. He redigs all of the wells, and he reveals even new wells. So this took tremendous strength. So here we see that Yitzhak is both love, which is chesed, and strength, which is gevura. Now, what we can learn from this is that every person has certain inclinations, certain personality traits that appear to be almost from birth, that whether you call it nature or nurture, most people have certain tendencies. But what we're learning from this is that if we don't widen our circle, our psyche, our personality, our spiritual direction, then in a sense, we're very one-dimensional. Now, our traits can be very, very good, but to be, the word today is holistic, which is a very good word for what we're trying to explain, that the idea is that we all have all kinds of possibilities to manifest and express all kinds of different ways of being. And this is one of the greatest challenges of life, that if we have a certain bent in life, do we have the wisdom and the strength and the know-how to also go to the opposite side and also integrate that kind of personality trait? This is a great challenge, but we see that this is one of the greatest trials in life. We're told that Abraham had 10 trials, and almost all of his trials had to do with being strong, which is the opposite of his just being very loving and accepting and welcoming. But many of his tests, he had to actually adopt the opposite, in Hebrew, midah, opposite characteristic, in order to pass the test. So that's a great teaching for all of us. Now, we saw last week, for those who were here last week, we saw also another manifestation of love from Yitzhak, is how he was actually the one to make peace between him and Yishmael, and between Hagar and Avram. After Sarah dies, we learned this last week, but in case you weren't here, after Sarah dies, so Avram reconnected with Hagar, who was the mother of Yishmael. And remember, they sent Yishmael and Hagar away because he was a very, very bad influence on Yitzhak. So you would imagine that Yitzhak would just stay away, but he didn't. He went to actually where they were, Be'er Lachai Ro'i, and he was the one who actually brought Hagar back to Avram. And it was on his suggestion, his merit, that Avram remarried her. So here again, we see Yitzhak, who his main characteristic is strength and gevura, but he shows a lot of love, And we see this at the end of the Parsha. We already mentioned that the giving of the blessing to Jacob is one of the most mysterious episodes in the whole Torah. Until this day, thousands of years later, there's still much discussion as to how it happened and why it happened and the way that it happened. Unfortunately, in the short time we have, we can't go into all of those details today. But even if you read it in English, you'll see it's what exactly is going on here. And the question just simply is, why did Isaac want to give the blessing to Esau in the first place? And here we see again his love, because we're told that he loved Esau. And this is a case where he learns from his father, Avram. Avram, who was the most loving person, but he was the one who negotiated, prayed for that God should save the evil people of Sodom. So what did Yitzhak learn from this? If my father could pray and negotiate with God to save what even Avram knew were very evil people, how much more so should I try to reach out to my own son, who also has his problems? Esau had tremendous potential, but he was not using it, and whatever he was using was not in the right way. So Yitzhak, he trusted Jacob. He knew Jacob, he'll be okay. But Esau, he needs a little extra boost. So my whole point here is, again, that we see that Yitzhak is full of love. He's full of strength, but he's also full of love. And now I want to deal with just one more part of the previous portion, is that it says in one verse, it says, V'yetze Yitzchak l'suach b'sadeh, that Yitzhak went out to converse in the fields. And when he was done with whatever he was doing, he lifted up his eyes and he saw camels coming, and the camels had Rivka. And so we want to look at this a little bit carefully. The sages tell us that l'suach b'sadeh, to converse in the fields, is a different way of saying prayer, but it's also a different way of saying meditating. That this is one of the main verses in the Torah that have to do with meditation. He was conversing in the fields. He was communing with God, but he was communing with God in a very personal, meditative manner. And in Hebrew, there are really two words for meditation. In modern Hebrew, it's just a takeoff on the word meditation, meditatsia. But the more ancient words for meditation are either hit bonanut or hit bodadut. Hit bonanut comes from the word bina, which means to understand. And hit bodadut comes from the word badad, which means to be alone. So here we see Yitzhak went out alone to converse in the fields. And also that there's a combination here of prayer and meditation. So this is a whole subject in of itself. But what we can say is that Yitzhak was forging a path of meditative prayer, or prayer as a meditation. And until this day, this is one of the deeper aspects of prayer. But the reason I'm bringing it is that the word in Hebrew, again, for meditation, hit bonanut, comes from bina. And one of the sayings about bina is Aim habanim smecha. A mother of children will be happy. That the inner dimension of understanding is joy. Now, why? This is something we've all experienced. It could be from something very, very mundane, that if there's something we don't understand, it could be like putting something together or following some instructions, and we just don't get it. We're just not getting it. And it's a little bit frustrating. And then we really put our effort into it and we figure it out. So it's like, got it. So that's like a moment of joy. But on a much higher level, if there's certain aspects of life, certain aspects of relationships, or our understanding of the universe or of God or ourselves, and we don't quite understand who we are, what we're doing, what life is all about, and at a certain point we have that epiphany, we have that moment of understanding. So that brings great joy. So here we see, we're like tying it all together now, that the name Yitzhak means to laugh. He brought great joy to Avram and Sarah. And we have to remember, without Yitzhak, there would be no Jewish religion. The idea of Yitzhak redigging the wells of Avram, again, is more than just a physical manifestation. He was ensuring that the teachings of Avram were revealed. that the waters were revealed. And this connects with him going out to the field to meditate. That meditation basically is a very inner joyous experience. Anyone who's meditating, we're not talking about sitting for an hour with our legs crossed and meditating. Many people are not able to do that. We're talking about meditation is simply focus. And that is Gevura. That is Yitzhak's main trait, is the ability to train our minds to focus. I think we all know you don't have to be ADD to be challenged with being able to focus. In the world that we live in now, where there is just so much stimuli, so much input, so many devices, so many ways of communicating, it's not easy to juggle everything and to be able to focus. That's why actually having a half an hour class by many people is just more than they can handle. People want the 2 minute or the 5 minute bite. Has to be quick, to the point, instant gratification. So I appreciate everyone coming on for a full half an hour here. So here we see, and we'll end with this idea, here we see Yitzhak, through meditation, is juggling great discipline, great strength to be able to focus his mind. But the result is this joy, is this tremendous joy. So what we can take from all of this is that we all can do, let's say, our own personal homework here. That when we look at ourselves, most of the time we can identify the directions we take in life fueled by our personality. But the challenge is that we want to be more balanced. We want to be more holistic. We want to be able to sometimes go to the opposite extreme if the case warrants it. And to know that not always to be this way, but sometimes we need to be that way. And this is a great, great lesson in life. And we see this throughout the life of Yitzhak, how he was able to take two very opposite traits of introversion and extroversion, of strength and love, and he was able to integrate it all together. So that should be our challenge and our blessing, that we should have the wisdom to know how to do that. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming on board today. As always, we'll take a few minutes if anyone has a question, a comment. So just one at a time, just please unmute, and let's see if we have anything today.
Excuse me, this is Norma.
Okay, hi.
Can you spell these words, the Hebrew words for meditation for me, please?
Okay, it's heat bonanut. Comes from the word bina. That's the root, is bina, or boneh, to build. Heat bonanut. And the other word is, heat bodedut, which comes from the word badad, levad, to be alone, not to be lonely, but to be able to go deep inside without all kinds of outside distractions, and to dig very deep inside, and also to connect directly with God. Did that answer it for you?
Yes, but can you spell how do you spell these words for the dude? Can you spell them letter by letter, please?
In Hebrew,
These
okay.
are Hebrew words, no? These are Hebrew words.
Yes, yes. Do you want me to spell it with the Hebrew letters or the English?
The English, please.
Okay, so the first one is HIT
Mhm.
BONANUT.
Okay,
Heat bonanut. The
okay.
second one is HIT
Mhm.
BODDADUT. Heat bodadut.
Uh-huh.
Is
Is
that
there any verse in the Bible that these words appear?
not in that form. Not
Okay.
in that form. These words come later in Kabbalistic teachings, but they're
Okay.
based on the idea of being badad, being alone, and from bina. But these words themselves never appear in the Bible.
Okay. Thank you very much. You're
You're
very kind,
welcome.
and I learn a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll see you next week.
Surely.
Thank
Have
you.
a very
So
good
good.
weekend.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks
Goodbye,
a lot.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.